Good evening and welcome to this evening's full council meeting. Members of the public, I would like to remind you that in line with the council's constitution, you are not able to speak or address the meeting this evening unless you have previously submitted a public question which forms part of this agenda. You are, however, welcome to listen and to observe the business conducted during this evening's meeting. Please can I ask you to respect this and to allow councillors to hear all the contributions made during the course of this meeting so that they can make informed decisions. If anyone does interrupt the meeting, they will be asked to leave. Agenda item 1, apologies for absence. I have received apologies from Councillor Webb and Councillor Wilson, Councillor Lumley, Councillor James Newport, Councillor Lisa Newport and Councillor Eaves. Do we have any further apologies? Thank you. Agenda item 2, the minutes of the meeting held on the 20th of July 2021. Members, are you happy for me to sign the meetings of the council held on the 20th of July?
Agreed.
Agreed, members, thank you. Agenda item 3, declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest, members? No. I will assume agreement unless anyone raises their hands. No? Members, before we continue with the main business of the meeting, I would like to move a motion without notice in line with Council Procedure Rule 14C to take item 12, Asset Delivery Programme, next. Do I have a seconder?
I'll second that, Chair.
Thank you. Can those in favour please raise their hand and keep them up while the officers count as we take a vote? Don't lower them until I ask you to do so. Please lower your hands. Thank you, members. Okay. Can those against please raise your hands right up and keep them up while the officers count them, and don't lower them until I ask you to do so. Thank you, members. You can now lower your hands. Are there any abstentions? Oh, please lower your hands, thank you. That was 23 for, 1 against, and 7 abstentions. Thank you. So that motion is carried. Members, I would like to welcome Richard Brooks from Anthony Collins Solicitors on my left. Agenda item 12, the Asset Delivery Programme. Members, we have 5 public questions relating to these items. There is a maximum of 3 minutes available for asking each question. First, I will ask Mr. Jim Cripps to ask his question to the Leader of the Council. Mr. Jim Cripps, would you please read out the following question?
Okay. Good evening, and thank you for the opportunity to ask a question. It's directed at the council leader as per protocol, but hopefully all the councillors received the message loud and clear. My specific question relates to the Asset Delivery Programme, the new version, the report, and in particular paragraph 3.6, which confirms the council's ability to modify the specification. My question, therefore, is, can you please explain why the covertly prepared scope, pre-COVID, and the output specification coming from that is being retained, despite a clear 9-to-1 against public response in the feedback, which was duplicated by our MP's opinion. And we're now moving into a post-COVID climate of austerity. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cripps. Councillor Wootton, would you like to respond to the question?
Thank you, Madam Chairman, and thank you to Mr. Cripps for asking the question. The Council's requirements for its assets are rooted in its asset strategy. This strategy was developed via a member working group process and approved at a public meeting of the Council in July 2018. This strategy articulates the Council's aims for its assets, these being to regenerate and improve the local area and facilities for local residents, provide high quality and sustainable community and civic buildings, and reduce future costs. The Member Working Party continued to guide the programme. A number of site visits, workshops and meetings were held with guidance provided by the Council's external technical experts and officers. The Council developed and approved the outline business case for the programme in January 2019, setting out the financial benefits of the programme. It is a public document and is available on our website. The output specification was developed through a further series of meetings and workshops with members, officers and technical advisors. It was approved by Council in September 2019. The output specification sets out the ambition the Council has for its new operational buildings and the vision of how the Council will work going forward. That is, an emphasis of mobile and flexible working and the flexible use of space for staff, members and the community. It also highlights the Council's requirements for environmentally and financially sustainable, low maintenance, energy efficient buildings. The Council carried out a comprehensive engagement process and in the summer published the responses received on its Voyage website. The Council is now listening to that feedback as it said it would and reflecting how that feedback can be reflected in the proposals. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Wootton. Next, I would like to call Miss Jill Waite. Please read out the question for the Leader of the Council.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you again for the opportunity. This is directed to the Leader, as per protocol. Will the Leader commit to the Mill Arts and Events Centre, also known as the Mill Hall, being removed from the Asset Delivery Programme? Will he commit to being removed from the Fusion Leisure contract, being renovated and aligned to the Freight House BREEAM levels, which I understand at the moment is good, and put out on a tender for an experienced events company to manage and protect Rochester District's only theatre venue? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mrs White. Councillor Wootton, would you like to respond to the question, please?
Thank you, Madam Chairman, and thank you, Ms Waite, for your question. The Mill Arts and Events Centre is managed by our leisure contractor Fusion Lifestyle. The facility has been managed under this contract by a number of different partners since the contract was first let. Our current contractor and previous operators of the facilities have instigated various strategies to drive up usage and revenue at the sites. However, the facility remains financially unsustainable. This council acted proactively to identify the issue, explore options and create a plan for high quality, environmentally and financially sustainable community facilities as set out in the output specification and business case approved by council. The site is the subject of this evening's report and will be debated. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Wootton. Next, would Ms Samantha Reid please read out your question for the Leader of the Council?
Once again, thank you for giving the opportunity to pose the question. And my question is to the Leader, of course. The Mill Hall was refurbished in 2003. Since then, both Fusion and the Council have failed to maintain this leisure asset, allowing it to become dire and not fit for purpose, or as one councillor commented, very expensive toilets. Was this deliberate neglect or systemic failure to maintain this council asset by officers and the executive councillors to sell off our community asset for development? Thank you.
Thank you, Ms Reid. Councillor Wootton, would you like to respond?
Thank you, Madam Chairman, and again, thank you, Ms Reid, for your question. The Mill Hall was, the Mill Arts and Events Centre has been managed under contract by our leisure partner since the contract was let approximately 20 years ago. During that time, the building has benefited from various capital works. However, the building does not meet our ambitions for low maintenance and high energy efficiency, coupled with low operational costs. During the life of the building, much has changed in the leisure sector. However, the Council has remained committed to working in partnership with its leisure contractor to ensure they invest and maintain the facility for the benefit of the local community. It is a fact, however, that the leisure market and use of the building has changed, and the facility has now become financially unsustainable to operate and does not support the ambition this Council has to become carbon neutral by 2030. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Wootton. Next, I would like to invite Mr John Payton to read out your question to the Leader of the Council, please.
Thank you for the opportunity, and this is directed to the Leader. Thank you. Regarding the proposed redevelopment of the Rayleigh Civic Suite and Garden site into commercial units and flat blocks, can the Council address why there has been no change in proposals despite overwhelming public objection to the proposals? The Council appears to be ignoring objections if they plan to proceed with the Civic Suite plans. In the Council's own engagement survey for the Civic Suite, 86% opposed the principle of redevelopment. 89% of respondents opposed the current proposals. The site is listed in the Council's spatial options document for potential development. Essex County Council Place Services has advised through the spatial options heritage assessment, development on this site will cause substantial harm to a heritage asset, and proposals causing this level of harm to the significance of a heritage asset should be avoided. Rayleigh Town Council has also stated in its response to the spatial options consultation that sites within the existing Rayleigh conservation area should not be considered for development. In a recent BBC article, the Royal Institute of Chartered Surveyors stated that due to the issue of embodied carbon, it is now promoting a refurbished first policy to the government, a campaign backed by 14 Stirling Prize winners, and the Royal Academy of Engineering is in agreement. The Chartered Institution of Building Service Engineers says we have to avoid demolition and new build. The Civic Suite proposals means Rayleigh will lose car parking space and green space. Rayleigh is the only Tier 1 settlement in the district and must have a civic presence. This was agreed when Rayleigh Urban Council joined with Rochford Rural to become Rochford District Council. The council should refurbish the Civic Suite for continued council use. Isn't it time this council abandons the plans for the Civic Suite on behalf of Rayleigh residents by acting on advice from ECC and Rayleigh Town Council and commit to protecting the designated conservation area?
Thank you, Mr Payton. Councillor Wootton, would you please respond?
Thank you, Madam Chairman, and thank you, Mr Payton, for your question. The Council carried out an extensive engagement process, published the feedback received, and has been reflecting on that feedback. With our partners, we continue to consider how this feedback could be reflecting in the proposals. It is important to note that the proposals the Council shared during the engagement process included the remodelling of the Council Chamber section of the Civic Suite building to create a modern, high-quality office space that could then support a local business to grow or relocate and therefore support the local economy. We take the feedback of statutory consultees very seriously. As such, this feedback will be fully debated as part of any future planning application. The scheme remains a proposal at this stage. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Wootton. Would Mr Richard Lambourne please read out the question to the Leader of the Council?
Good evening and thank you for the opportunity. Can the Leader please comment on as to why the planning and legal departments haven't had the resources or experience to manage such a project more proactively, saving considerable external costs? As a background, when the Council first proposed the ADP, it had a budget of 3.4 million, but of that, 0.6 million was for professional fees. This is a massive 18% of the initial budget. Should a council of Rochford district size be able to manage such projects in-house, thus saving the council taxpayer considerable amounts of money, especially in a project where all the land is already owned by the council?
Thank you, Mr Lambourne. Councillor Wootton, would you like to respond to the question?
Thank you again, Madam Chairman, and thank you, Mr Lambourne, for your question. Rochford District Council is a small authority with limited resources and has not historically undertaken projects of this magnitude. As such, it would not be cost effective or even possible to recruit and retain the senior professional staff required across a range of disciplines such as project management, legal and finance, with the required specialist knowledge to support a programme of this complexity. It is common for local authorities to buy in this kind of professional support for major projects for this reason. It would not provide value for money if the required expertise was not brought in, as the financial risks of the programme failing or not achieving the required outcomes over the longer term outweigh those one-off project costs. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wootton. That completes the public questions. The responses for these will be included in the minutes of the council meeting and will also be sent out in writing to the residents who have raised these questions. Thank you. Members, we also have received a number of member questions on notice on this item. Councillor Mrs Mason, can you please read out Councillor Reeves' question to the Leader? Thank you.
Sorry, thank you.
Councillor Hoy.
I'm just detaching. Are we standing for questions or sitting down?
Standing.
Right, this
Thank you.
could be taller, even though I'm short. We'll go for it. This is a question from Councillor Adrian Eves. to the Leader of the Council. Please explain, following the widely publicised leaflet at the election earlier this year, circulated by the Conservative Party, whether the asset delivery programme was officially paused in any part, as the leaflet declared, and if so, when and under whose authority?
Thank you, Councillor Hoy. Councillor Wootton, would you like to respond, please?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. And it does seem a little odd responding to Councillor Hoy on behalf of, who's acting on behalf of Councillor Eves. So please do not take my comments that I'm going to read absolutely personally, because they are directed towards Councillor Eves. But firstly, on a point of accuracy, and may I add, not for the first time once again, Councillor Eves, your question is factually incorrect. Where does it say on the leaflet, Asset Delivery Programme? From someone, Councillor Eves, who on record claims to hate politics and has a strong belief in what is right, I find this question pretty rich, coming from someone who has called on 2 occasions for the Asset Delivery Programme to be paused. And I refer to the minutes of the 8th of September, page 5, where Councillor Eves moved a motion seconded by Councillor Hookway that the project be paused. And you can read for yourself, members, the detail of that minute. By asking the question, there is an inference that despite considerable public feedback, you would have carried on regardless. Against the background of considerable concern, a promise was made in that leaflet to listen, review and reflect on feedback from the engagement process. And that was confirmed in a council press release on the 22nd of September issued in my name. There has been a pause, and as an administration, we have listened and are taking action accordingly. Tonight is a stage in the process. If that is a crime, then I'm guilty as charged. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wootton. Councillor Hoy, do you have a supplementary question?
I'm not sure it's appropriate for me to have
Thank
a
you.
supplementary. Thank you.
Councillor Wilkinson, can you please read out your question to the Leader?
Thank you, Chairman. It's a shame Councillor Eves is not here, because I'm sure he'd have a lot to say in response. However, I'll move on. Tonight's agenda, we're talking about the update position of the Asset Delivery Programme in light of public feedback. With the exception of the officer's report and the terms of reference for the partnership panel, the documents which accompany the report and those with the details of what options are marked as commercially sensitive and not to be shared with the public. Please can the Leader of the Council explain to this Council, and more importantly to the members of the public who are present, precisely why the public are being excluded from hearing the amended plans the Council has come up with, which the Council will be expecting members to vote on tonight without being able to seek any feedback from their ward residents beforehand. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wilkinson, sorry. Councillor Wootton, would you like to respond?
Thank you, Madam Chairman, and thank you, Councillor Wilkinson, for your question. The Council is under a contract with GB Partnerships. Exempt Appendix 1 is a revised scheme proposed by GB further to feedback from the public engagement exercise, and it is their obligation under the contract to meet the requirement of the Council's output specification. The information in the appendix is commercially sensitive and is exempt under the 1972 Act because it is information relating to the business affairs of GB Partnerships. If agreed, a formal planning application would be submitted, and it will be subject to formal statutory consultation under the planning process. Appendices 2 and 3, Appendices 2 and 4 are exempt because to release the information would compromise the Council's ability to negotiate effectively and protect the Council's commercial position under contract. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wootton. Councillor Wilkinson, would you like to read out your question?
I'd like a supplementary question to my
Supplementary
first, please,
first,
Chair.
sorry.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman. I've looked up what commercially sensitive means, and I do accept that I'm not a lawyer in that field, so I will stand to be corrected. But what I've discovered is that the commercially sensitive is defined as information that a rival in the marketplace who obtains access to, it could be harmful. So for examples such as information of client lists, tender documents, pricing documents, technical drawings and plans, etc. Now, to my knowledge, Chairman, and please correct me if I'm wrong, there's nobody else involved in this. There's only GB Partnerships. There's no other business involved in this whatsoever. So no other organisation is going to gain access to this. So I don't understand why this is commercially sensitive. And to be quite frank with you, I think this is dangerous ground, bearing in mind the backlash that we received, or the council received, in May this year, earlier than May this year, when the plans were released and we had the webinar. You know, because there'd been no public consultation beforehand, the public didn't like the options that we're coming up with. So I'll say no more on that, but there's no other company involved, so I don't see why this is commercially sensitive.
Thank you. Councillor Wilkinson, did you have a question, a supplementary question?
Not to that, Chairman, no, I thought that...
Thank you. Would you like to read out your following question then?
Okay, so thank you, Chairman. In relation to tonight's agenda, we'll be discussing the asset delivery programme. Can the leader of the council please assure members of this council and members of the public that he has not tied this council into any contract with either GB Partnerships or any other organisation for that matter, that in the event that we as a council decide to abandon the project as a whole, or any part of that project resulting from public opinion, there will not be penalties to us, either financial or otherwise? Can he give us his assurance that we can vote this evening with confidence that we will not be penalised by a GB Partnership in the event that, for example, we decide to vote for option 2?
Thank you, Councillor Wilkinson. Councillor Wootton.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, and thank you, Councillor Wilkinson. Appendix 4 sets out the legal implications and the risks of pursuing the options are in the public report. As with any commercial contract, there are express provisions to allow one party to terminate the contract without the other being left financially disadvantaged. If we choose to abandon the project, as per Councillor Wilkinson's words, there would be abortive costs payable. This is not deemed to be a penalty per se, as there is no breach of contract. The contract was approved by Council on the 8th of September 2020 and attached to the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wilkinson. Wootton, and Councillor Wilkinson, do you have a supplementary question?
I do, and I have a question this time, Chairman. Thank you to the leader. We've been assured throughout this process that the contract which was awarded to GB Partnerships is non-binding on us. In other words, we still have the option to stop the project entirely. Why then are we as members being told that there are likely to be financial implications, whatever term you wish to apply to it, if we decide not to proceed with the project, or in this case, even amend the project? And I'm not going to quote, obviously, because it's exempt, but the legal advice even talks about the fact...
You've asked your question. Thank you.
Well, I haven't actually. I've still got further to add.
Okay.
Thank you. It is clear to me the contract that has been agreed between GB Partnerships and Rochford Council allows an expectation for GB Partnership that they will be developing these sites. It is simply a case of what they will be doing, and the council has not agreed to that. How does the leader, here's my question, how does the leader then explain that if members were to choose option 2 this evening, a huge amount of public money could be wasted on compensating GB Partnerships?
Thank you, Councillor Wilkinson.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Thank you, Councillor Wilkinson. You know, I really do get a little confused when we do what I pledged we would do, and that is actually sit back and listen to the 1,133 responses we had to the public engagement process. And then you try and put us into a corner by then criticising what we're actually doing. May I suggest, Madam Chairman, that we really do have questions rather than long-winded statements. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hoy, Would you like to read out your question to the leader, please?
Thank you, Chairman. Again, another question to the Leader of the Council. I apologise for the lengthiness of it. As part of a heritage at risk review, Historic England to complete and update as appropriate a survey of its conservation areas, highlighting condition threats and trends. The surveys identify conservation areas that are deteriorating or in a very bad or poor condition and are not expected to change significantly in the next 3 years as being defined as at risk. RDC received this request on the 18th of May 2021. RDC did not respond to the survey as their resources have been focused this summer on work towards preparing a new local plan. This is what we were told. The last surveys of the district's conservation areas were carried out in 2007. Rayleigh Conservation Area Survey states, Rayleigh Castle is a scheduled ancient monument protected under the 1979 Ancient Monuments Act. Rayleigh Castle is important as an historic monument, the only significant public open space and amenity in the conservation area, and as a wildlife haven. The outer bailey of Rayleigh Castle is today occupied by the Mill Hall, the windmill and associated car parking. The Mill Hall, 1971, is a large functional regular community building incorporating a theatre and a cafeteria. Will the Leader explain, sorry it says Council but it does mean the Leader, explain why they didn't implement Rayleigh conservation management proposals? One, the entrance by the Mill Hall needs to be given greater emphasis and presence and needs to be advertised by a better positioned notice board. The idea canvassed in the conservation plan to recreate the Barbican entrance is an exciting one. The space in front of the Mill Hall on Bellingham Lane is a prominent one at the edge of this group of public buildings, and the monument is laid out with sculpture and planting and has the potential to be a piazza. This is from the report. Will the Leader commit to completing a new comprehensive survey of all conservation areas, and will the Leader accept their own conservation survey states that the Mill Arts and Events Centre is classed as a theatre?
Thank you, Councillor Hoy. Councillor Wootton, would you like to respond, please?
Thank you, Madam Chairman, and thank you, Councillor Hoy, for your 3 questions there. If I can just go back to point E, I think, and I will just go through them in order and say, will the Leader explain why they didn't implement Rayleigh Conservation Management proposals? The answer to that particular question is that the Rayleigh Conservation Area Appraisal and Management Plan document was commissioned to serve as part of the evidence base for the local development framework as it stood at that time. The proposals themselves do not represent council policy, but are aspirational, and the level of detail set out in the proposals was not adopted into the planning policy documents, nor would it be usual to do so. I then go on to your second question at point F, and as a reminder, and will the Leader commit to completing a new comprehensive survey of all conservation areas? And the answer is the need to review the evidence base for the conservation area will be considered as part of the current local plan review. It is too early to conclude whether new surveys of the conservation areas will be required. And your third question at point G, and will the Leader accept their own conservation survey states the Mill Arts and Events Centre is classed as a theatre? And I refer you, by way of answer, to page 36, paragraph 10.64 of the 2007 Rayleigh Conservation Area Plan. The documentation states the Mill Hall is a large functional community building incorporating a theatre and a cafeteria. This statement does not suggest that the building should be classed as a theatre any more than it suggests it should be classed as a cafeteria. Rather, it is merely an observation of functions being served within the setting of a community building. Thank you, Councillor Hoy. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Wootton. Councillor Hoy, you have a supplementary question.
Thank you. I just have one supplementary question to keep it short. This is going to be on the final one about the classification as a theatre. Clearly, I've asked that for a reason, which I'm sure Councillor Wootton knows why. There were changes in classifications of planning in 2020. The Mill Arts
the Mill Arts and Events Centre was classified as a D2, which encompasses theatres, cinemas, etc. Theatres, cinemas, etc., according to planning, should be reclassified. When D2 was abolished, should be reclassified as sui generis, which I'm sure we all know, we've done planning. However, for some reason, it's been classified as F2. Can you please explain why this council chose to reclassify the Mill Arts and Events Centre, which was D2, as F2 rather than sui generis?
Thank you, Councillor Hoy. Would you like to respond, Councillor Fulton?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Thank you, Councillor Hoy. You've had the benefit of doing a little bit more research on your supplementary than I've had in being able to give you an effective reply. But it's a fair question that deserves a fair answer, and I will ensure that officers do come up with an appropriate reply, which will be published on our website as well. Thank you very much indeed.
May I request it sent to all members as well, please?
Certainly. Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
No problem at all, and thank you for that question.
Councillor Stanley, can you please read out your question to the leader?
Thank you, Chairman. To the leader, regarding the proposed redevelopment of the Rayleigh Civic Suite and the Mill Hall and Garden site into commercial units and flat blocks, can the leader address why there has been no change in proposal despite overwhelming public objection to the proposals?
Thank you, Councillor Stanley. Councillor Wootton?
Madam Chairman, thank you, Councillor Stanley, for your question. And actually, I thought tonight was a stage in the process that we were going through to actually address the points. But I will more formally respond to you and say that I welcome this opportunity to have the debate and answer your question. At the outset of this process, as leader of Rochford District Council, I made a promise that we would listen to all representations made regarding the proposals. And I do want to emphasise the point they were proposals. And I also want to make the point that people at the time said that we would just railroad this through. We're not. We're listening. As I said earlier, 1,133 responses, predominantly on the Rayleigh side, deserve to be listened to. And that is exactly what we're doing. The council said it would carry out an engagement process, and that is what we did. The council also said it would publish the feedback received, and it also met that commitment. The council also committed to reflecting on that feedback, and that is what we are doing. With our partners, we continue to consider how this feedback could be reflected in the proposals as they evolve. Thank you, Councillor Stanley. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wootton. Councillor Stanley, do you have a supplementary question to ask?
Thank you, Chairman. It's nice to hear that from the leader of the council. However, and I realise that the leader of the council is taking notice of public opinion, and I welcome that entirely. However, there are certain aspects where there is a little bit of confusion from the council to the public as to what is happening next, and I'm sure that the leader will endeavour to publicise that in the future. Thank you.
Was that a question? There's no question to answer.
It's not a question. It's a statement.
You only get a question.
Well, the question is, when will does the leader anticipate when when the announcement will be made in due course?
Councillor Wootton, are you able to answer that?
Thank you, Madam Chairman, and thank you, Councillor Stanley, for your supplementary question. We live in an era, don't we, where we want to know the next stage of the process before we've dealt with the current phase. So, as I said a little earlier, we are in a process tonight, depending on how the debate goes and how the vote goes at item 12, will really determine what is the next phase of the process. So I think you've got to wait for the excitement to come a little bit later on in the meeting. But I made a pledge that we would listen. We've heard comments from the public, and a lot of those comments have been extremely constructive, and I welcome those comments. And if you ask for feedback, it would be disingenuous not to listen to that feedback. But at the same time, members, I've got to say that the council has to look at its assets. It has to make sure they're cost effective. It has to make sure that it meets the community need. And I actually believe that what we have got here is an exciting programme, albeit the call from residents, particularly on the Raleigh side, is that we need to have a look at it again to see what we can do to come up. There's no point in listening to people or asking people to engage if we don't listen to them. What the outcome will be, I can't tell you at the moment, but I am committed to an open, transparent and honest process. I can't offer you more than that. Thank you, Councillor Stanley. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wootton. Members, we have one motion on notice, and this item was proposed by Councillor Eaves. Do we have another to stand in on behalf of Councillor Eaves?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I will...
Councillor Mrs Mason, thank you.
Yes, with your permission, Madam Chairman, I will, for allowing me to speak for Councillor Eaves, who is recovering from an operation, and I'm sure would have wanted to be part of this debate and put his view here tonight. But his motion is, following the leader's announcement regarding the future of the Mill Hall, that this council agrees to there being cross-party involvement in discussion and formation or cessation of plans and proposals for the Mill Hall site going forward. Thank you.
Councillor Mrs Mason, is that your proposed, are you the proposer?
That is the motion from Councillor Eaves.
And you're proposing that, are you?
I thought I was quite clear, yes.
Thank you. And do we have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Hoy.
I don't need to speak.
Councillor Wootton, are you able to answer that? Oh, sorry. Okay. Do we have any questions? A debate? Yeah. Councillor Wootton.
I was just wondering whether Councillor Hoy was going to speak now or as the seconder, I wondered whether Councillor Hoy was going to speak.
I reserve to speak. My right to speak later.
Okay.
Okay, you reserve the right to speak. Thank you.
So if I may be the first speaker with your permission, Madam
Thank you.
Chairman. And it is slightly odd speaking without the proposer actually here, and certainly we wish Councillor Eaves well soon. So I hope he soon is back to good health and his normal self. If I may say, Madam Chairman, this motion smacks of Councillor Eaves' personal eagerness and rather desperate attempts to make a name for himself politically. Why would I, or this administration, support a superfluous and unnecessary motion for something already agreed and already in place? The report at item 12 provides two options for the Mill Arts and Events Centre site. If option 2 is agreed, it is proposed that the partnership panel will play a significant part in the development of this separate outline business case for the Mill Arts and Events Centre site, working with officers and advisors to formulate the options analysis. And section 5 of the report at item 12, page 12.5, sets that out very clearly and very specifically. It is proposed that the partnership panel will therefore meet not only to continue their good work on the programme, but specifically to participate in this new community centre workstream. The partnership panel is cross-party and will be supported by senior council officers and external advisors as necessary. Effective cross-party arrangements are already in place in the form of the partnership panel and the council, with their own terms of reference and governance mechanisms. And I will not, therefore, be supporting this motion simply because Those mechanisms are already in place. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Wootton. Councillor Dray. Excuse me, Councillor Dray, I don't think your microphone's on.
I'll start again. Thank you, Madam Chairman. I agree and support the words of Councillor Wootton and would emphasise that the partnership panel will continue to be chaired by an elected member and will continue to be cross-party and be supported by senior council officers and external advisors as required. As such, and as chairman of the partnership panel, I will not be supporting this motion. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Dray. Councillor Wilkinson, I'm sorry. I know, twice. My apologies. Got it in my head.
Thank you, Chairman. It's interesting to listen to the comments from both Councillor Dray and Councillor Wootton. Is this working for me? Yeah, it is working. Because I need to remind the leader of a conversation he and I had after the election, and I'm sure all your group's aware of this because he said that he went back to you all and spoke to you about this, when I said, why hasn't the independent group got a seat on this panel, which we had before, or we had one in conjunction with the then Green group? And I was told that the Conservative group won't support it. So when you talk about cross-party, I'd like to remind you all there are 4 political groups in this council, not 3. The independent group consists of myself and Councillor Lorman, both of whom are representatives for Wheatley Ward, in which the main contentious assets sit. And yet we are not allowed a seat on this panel. We're not allowed a say in this project at all. I've asked, and I've asked, and I've asked. And the leader's nodding his head because he knows I've spoken to him and we've been refused access to this panel other than as an observer. So I do support this motion because this is not cross-party. This is purely and simply pro rata, where the number of seats have been decided being 7. So the Conservatives have 5, Liberal Democrats have 1, Rochester District residents have 1. What about the independent group? Why don't we get 1 so it's not cross-party?
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Wilkinson. Councillor Stanley. Ah, got the name down. Councillor Connell.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's strange talking to a motion where the proposer isn't here and perhaps Councillor Mason doesn't actually have the information I seek, but bearing in mind the comments from the leader, perhaps it would be worth an explanation as to how Councillor Eaves sees this new working group working with the existing partnership panel. Whilst I don't know Councillor Eaves as well as Councillor Wootton, I'm not sure I agree with his suggestions on motivation on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Connell. Do we have any other speakers wishing to speak? Okay, well, we're going to take this to the vote then. Oh, sorry. Yes, you've got the right to speak. Councillor Hoy.
Thank you, Chairman. It's always difficult speaking to a motion you didn't propose. I take on board the comments made by Councillor Wootton. However, I think there's as Councillor Wilkinson said, I think we see things slightly differently from this side. And also there is the point about the partnership board as well. So the motion is talking about cross-party working panel, which is different to the working panel which Councillor Wootton is referring to, for which we have seen as terms of reference, which is a pro rata working group, which is effectively a subcommittee of the council. At the moment, there's no representative on the board, which makes the decision. This is purely officer-based decision-making, and we feel that there should be a working group which feeds into that at the very least. I mean, it can be a partnership panel, it can be something else, but the board is undemocratic as we see it, and that's why we're proposing this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hoy. Members, we will now vote on this motion. Please raise your hand in favour and keep your hands up so that the officers can count.
Need to stand.
Okay, all stand for a recorded vote. Yes, it's a recorded vote.
Councillor Mrs Butcher, for, against or abstain, please.